guys, it's Angela, and today I'm going to be telling you about all of the books I read during the months of July and August. So during those months, I read a total of 11 books. I read 1 2-star book, 3 4-star books, and 7 5-star books. So I definitely read a lot of things that I really enjoyed, and let's get into talking about them. So first, let's talk about a book that I didn't enjoy, which was Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman. I picked this up looking for a really nice beachy thriller, and it delivered on the beachy aspect that I was looking for, but it fell flat on the thriller aspect. This book is about a woman who is going on her honeymoon, and the mystery kind of unfolds while she's on her honeymoon, and the first chapter starts with her digging a grave. So it really grips you from the beginning, but the mystery just really fell flat for me, and I just found myself not caring. I did listen to this on audio, and the author did narrate it, and she's English, and she did a beautiful job narrating it. And I think if I had been physically reading, I definitely would have DNF'd it, but because I just had to lay there and listen, I just kind of pushed through. I don't remember anything specifically problematic about this book or anything like that, but after reading so many amazing thrillers this month and then picking this up, it just didn't compare, and the mystery fell flat for me. So that's why I gave it 2 stars. Sticking with the beachy theme, let's move into our 4-star books. And the first 4-star book I have to talk about today is Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. This is essentially an Ursula origin story, and The Little Mermaid is one of my favorite movies, and I love reading retellings about it. So it was really cool to pick up an Ursula retelling, and my expectations for this were pretty high, and I was pleasantly surprised. This is the first book in a series or a duology. I know that the second book just recently came out, and that's the whole Ariel side of the retelling, but this one is strictly Ursula. I did listen to this on audio. The narrator was also English, so the listening experience was really great, and overall I really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy with it. My next 4-star book is The Other Side, and this is a graphic novel by Jody Houser and a bunch of other people. And if you know me, you know I love Stranger Things, and I really did enjoy reading this. This is basically about Will when he's in the Upside Down. So it was really cool because you don't really get to know too much about what he was going through while he was in the Upside Down. So I really enjoyed it, and it was really cute overall, and it gave it 4 stars. The next book I gave 4 stars was The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Rare. I listened to this on audio. And this book is really cool. It's about this girl who gets an inheritance for this grandmother, but it's not really her grandmother. And the story overall is just really dark, and it gives you really gothic vibes, and she reads tarot cards, and I thought it was a really immersive, nice, dark gothic thriller. So before I get into talking about the 5-star books, which are going to be a majority of this video, I did want to quickly announce something new that I'm going to be doing on my channel, and that is every month I want to at least try to pick up one booktuber's favorite book and just shout them out and see what I think of their favorite book. So to start off reading booktuber's favorite books, I picked up Radio Silence by Alice Oseman, and if you don't already know whose favorite book this is Kat from Paperback Dreams. This is her favorite book, and I gave it 5 stars, and I absolutely loved it. This is almost kind of like a coming-of-age story. It's about this girl who goes to university, and she meets this boy named Aled, and they develop this really cool friendship, and it's just kind of I feel like I needed to read it. I feel like I read it at a time that I needed to read it, which was right now because I'm personally feeling kind of lost with school, and this book was just absolutely amazing, and I know why Kat loves it so much. So yeah, 5 stars for sure, and definitely something that I will see myself rereading in the future. Next up we have The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I actually listened to this book on audio, and you wouldn't think, but this audiobook is actually only 3 hours long, which blew my mind, and I listen to audiobooks on double speed. So I listened to this start to finish in about an hour and a half. The whole audiobook itself is narrated by a full cast of characters. There's music. It's probably one of the most immersive audiobooks that I've ever read, even more immersive than Sadie. And if you've listened to the Sadie audiobook, then you know how immersive that is. So it was just a really cool way to consume the story. I've seen the movies a bunch of times, but I've never actually read the books. And I really enjoyed listening to this book on audio, and I can't wait to pick up the rest. So yeah, 5 stars. My next 5-star book was The Unfunny Mooners by Christina Lauren. This is my second Christina Lauren book, and so far it's my favorite. This is about a girl named Olive who is notorious for having bad luck. And her sister, who is also her twin, is notorious for having good luck, and she's always like winning things. So she basically has a wedding, and most of it has been paid for by sweepstakes and stuff. And everyone who eats the seafood buffet gets sick. But Olive doesn't like seafood, and the best man doesn't like buffets, and they hate each other. But because the whole party gets sick, the bride and the groom aren't able to go on their honeymoon. And of course, this honeymoon is a honeymoon that the bride has won. So she sends her twin sister, Olive, and the best man, whom she hates, on this honeymoon. And this book was so amazing. It's a hate-to-love romance. It's laugh out loud funny. I loved it so much, and I would highly, highly recommend it. The next book I have is a reread, and I've talked about it a lot on my channel, so I don't want to talk about it too much, but that is A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemner. If you don't already know, this is my favorite book of 2019 and probably my favorite book of all time. This book is about a girl named Harper who has cerebral palsy, and it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I reread this with some of my friends in anticipation of picking up the arc, and obviously I've loved it. I've talked about this book 1,000 times. I have this whole video about chronic illness and disability representation in books, which is based off of this book, which I'll leave linked down below. But yeah, obviously I loved it, and I'm so excited to pick up my arc of A Heart So Fierce and Broken. The last 3 books I have to talk about today are thrillers, and I kind of want to start with the one that shook me to my core the most first, and that is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This is my first time reading a Karen Slaughter book, and this book absolutely shook me to my core. I listened to it in audio, and I literally found myself like laying in bed with my mouth wide open, just shocked. This book is dark, gruesome, and definitely not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of trigger warnings that go into this book, and I feel like I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. So I would definitely go and like look on Goodreads for like the full list, but the ones that I can remember off the top of my head are obviously murder, torture, violence, sexual assault. This book is very dark, and I feel like the best way to go into this book is not knowing much, because that's how I went into it, and I found that that was kind of the best way, because personally I don't like to know too much about my thrillers before I go into them. Also, a random trigger warning that no one's mentioned, but it kind of like triggered me, and it's probably just a me thing, but there is a person who breaks their collarbone in this book, and it's like described heavily, and I have 6 screws and a metal plate in my collarbone. I've broken my collarbone. So reading about this, I was like, ooh, like, yikes. So there's that. I'm sure that won't really apply to a lot of people, but the small group of us who have broken our collarbones, just know that you're about to witness it again. So yeah, this book was absolutely insane. It follows 2 different timelines and how a murder from long ago and one now come together in the most unlikely way. If you feel that you can handle this subject matter, I would highly, highly recommend picking this book up. Next up, we have Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is also my first time reading a Riley Sager book, and I did give it 5 stars. This is about a woman who doesn't really have a lot of money, and there's this opportunity to stay in this really well-known apartment known as the Bartholomew, and basically all she has to do is apartment sit. But there's a few catches, such as she can't have anybody over, she can't spend a night away from the apartment, and she's also really not supposed to bother the residents. So it sounds kind of like an opportunity that's too good to be true, but also she needs the money, so she does. She stays there, and things go crazy from there. And the plot twists and turns throughout this book, I was absolutely not expecting. You definitely go through this book and you're like, okay, is this paranormal? Is it not paranormal? It's kind of vague, and it definitely keeps you on your toes and keeps you turning the pages. And the ending, again, shook me, and it was so amazing. So I highly recommend reading it. And the last book I have to talk about is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. This is about a woman named Libby Day whose family was murdered 25 years ago. She testified that it was her 15-year-old brother Ben who killed everyone, and he's since been put in jail. And now we're 25 years into the future, or I guess present day, and Libby really doesn't have a lot of money, and she's contacted by this club called the Kill Club who studies true crime, and this club believes that Ben was actually not the killer and that they think that they can prove it. So this book goes from present to past. You also get the perspectives of Libby's mother and Ben the hours leading up to the murder, and it was truly fantastic, and I highly would recommend reading it if you haven't already. So those are all the books I read in July and August. I definitely won't be combining my wrap-ups anymore. I feel like I just things got away from me this summer, and it was just easiest to combine this wrap-up because I only did read 4 books in July, so adding it to my August wrap-up wasn't that big of a deal. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good one. Bye!